My name is Avery Cole. I'm 26 years old. And this is how I took revenge on the man who shattered my trust, ruined my family, and tried to leave me in pieces. I used to believe in love the way little girls believe in fairy tales, and for a while, I thought I was living one. His name was Blake Carter, charming, successful, and dangerously good at pretending he cared. We were engaged. He knew everything about me, my insecurities, my dreams, my family, especially my family. Opening image. I'm sitting in a courtroom. My palms are sweating, but my face doesn't show it. Across from me is the man who once kissed my forehead every morning and promised me forever. Now, he won't even look me in the eye. The judge's voice sounds muffled, like I'm underwater, because all I can hear is the echo of that night. The night that rewrote my entire life. Flashback. No warning. My mom clutched her chest and fell to the ground during a family dinner at our house. I screamed for Blake to call an ambulance, but he just froze. He didn't move, didn't dial, didn't kneel, just stood there, eyes cold, mouth shut, watching my world fall apart. I called 911 myself, but we were too late. My mom was gone. We said it was a heart attack. Everyone believed it, everyone except me, because when I looked into Blake's eyes that night, I saw something I'd never seen before. Emptiness, like he wanted it to happen. And slowly, quietly, I started pulling the pieces together. He had access to her medication. He knew about her condition. And weeks before it happened, he convinced her to refinance the house, to help us start our life together. A lie that cost us everything. But this isn't a murder mystery. This isn't about proving what he did. This is about what I did next. Because you don't walk away from a betrayal like that unchanged. You either crumble or you evolve. I chose the latter. And I didn't go to the police. I didn't scream. I didn't even confront him. I smiled. I let him believe I still loved him. I let him think he got away with it for months. And in that time, I studied every single weakness he had. His secrets, his finances, his guilt, his reputation. Revenge isn't loud. It's calculated. And Blake never saw it coming. They broke me. But I didn't just survive. I learned how to destroy someone without laying a single hand. And this was just the beginning. I grew up in a small town in Oregon, the kind of place where everybody knows your name, but not always your story. My story started with my mom, Jenna, a single parent who raised me on nothing but grit, grace, and an endless supply of coffee. She was a nurse who worked double shifts most nights, but never missed my school plays, science fairs, or even those awkward middle school talent shows. We didn't have much, but I never felt poor. She made our tiny two-bedroom apartment feel like the safest place on earth. And whenever the world felt too heavy, she'd say, "Baby, we don't run from hard. We walk through it. Together." She was my hero. After high school, I didn't have the luxury of going off to some big university. I stayed close, worked mornings at a diner, and took night classes at community college. I hustled because she did, and eventually I landed a job as a paralegal at a mid-sized law firm in Portland. For the first time, I felt like I was building something that mattered. I loved my job. I loved reading case files, preparing briefs, organizing evidence. I believed in justice, in the idea that the truth meant something. And then I met Blake Harper. He had just made partner at the firm. Young, sharp, confident. The kind of man who made every room feel smaller just by standing in it. But with me, he was different. Or at least, he made me think he was. He asked me questions no one else ever had. About my mom, my childhood, my dreams. He listened like every word I said was sacred. And after a lifetime of carrying the weight alone, I finally felt like someone was offering to hold it with me. We started dating, casual at first. He'd bring me coffee at work, leave little notes on my desk, text me at 2 a.m. just to say he missed me. I fell fast, and I fell hard. After a year, he asked me to move in. After two, he proposed. He gave me a ring so beautiful, I didn't even ask how he could afford it. I was too busy picturing our future, a house, maybe kids, maybe even time for me to go back to law school. Life finally felt full. With Blake's help, I was able to move my mom into a better apartment closer to me, got her a new doctor, better care. I finally felt like I was repaying her for everything she gave up for me. Blake wasn't just my fiance. He was my future, my safe place, and I trusted him with everything: my money, my passwords, my heart. There were signs, though, little things, the kind you brush off because love makes you blind and comfort makes you lazy. My best friend, Mara, was the only one who ever really said anything. She didn't like how Blake would sometimes speak over me in conversations, how he'd correct me about things I knew were true, or how he'd question every dollar I spent, even though we shared a joint account. His idea, of course. Control can sound like concern, Mara told me once. Just make sure it's not one disguised as the other. But I laughed it off, told her she was overthinking. Because when you've waited your whole life for stability, you don't question the hand that's offering it, even when it starts to feel like a leash. Looking back, I hate how much of myself I gave up just to keep things peaceful. How I flinched when he raised his voice, but told myself he was just stressed from work. How I stopped wearing red lipstick because he said it made me look too loud. How I said no to a promotion because it would have meant longer hours and less time keeping his life running smoothly. I thought I was being a good partner, a supportive fiancé, but what I really was conditioned by a man who knew exactly how to manipulate love into obedience. Still, I kept pretending, kept planning our wedding, kept telling my mom, he's just tired. He loves me. She saw it too, I think, but she never pushed. She just said, sweetheart, love shouldn't feel like a job you're scared of losing. I didn't listen, not until the night I lost her. That night didn't just break me, it ripped away every illusion I ever clung to. And once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. What came next wasn't revenge. Not at first. It was grief, then rage, then something colder, sharper, purpose. Because Blake didn't just take my mother. He took the girl I used to be. Trusting, hopeful, soft, but in her place, he created a woman who had nothing left to lose and everything to expose. It was a Friday. I'd been out of town at a weekend retreat with a few colleagues from the firm. Mandatory bonding stuff. I wasn't supposed to be back until Sunday, but I left early. Something about the whole trip felt off. Maybe I just missed my mom. Maybe something in my gut already knew. I walked into our apartment a little after 6 p.m. The lights were on. The TV was playing some old hospital drama in the background, but it was quiet. Too quiet. Then I heard a sound I'll never forget. A shallow, gasping breath. I found her on the kitchen floor, one hand clutched to her chest, the other reaching for the table. Her lips were blue. She tried to speak, but the words didn't come. I dropped everything, called 911, cradled her head in my lap while whispering, "You're okay. I'm here. Help is coming." But help came too late. They tried. God, they tried. But by the time we got to the hospital, she was already gone. Just like that. Gone. The doctor said it was a cardiac event. Sudden, irreversible. I nodded. signed the papers, stood there in shock. But something didn't sit right. I knew her medication schedule, her triggers. I was careful, obsessively so. So, how did this happen? 3 days later, I got the answer. We had a security camera in the hallway outside her apartment, installed months ago after a string of break ins. The footage automatically backed up to my cloud account, and when I checked it, I saw Blake showing up around 1 p.m. the day she died, letting himself in with the key I gave him. He stayed exactly 13 minutes, and then walked out casually. No panic, no urgency. When I asked the building manager for lobby footage, I saw something even more chilling. My mother stumbling into the hallway a few minutes after he left, trying to call for help, collapsing just off camera. He was there. He knew she was in distress, and he left. I confronted him that night, my voice shaking, my hands cold. His response? You're being emotional. You think I'd just let your mom die? No remorse, no explanation, just calm deflection. He said she was fine when he left, that maybe she was faking it to manipulate us, that she was always dramatic like that. I felt like I was looking into the face of a stranger, a man who had learned to mimic empathy like a language he didn't speak. But the betrayal didn't end there. A few days later, I got a call from HR at the firm. Something about discrepancies in our pro bono fund. My name kept popping up in the paper trail as the listed contact on several wire transfers to a non-profit I'd never heard of, a non-profit that didn't exist. When I pressed harder, I found bank records, signed forms, a fake EIN, all tied to me, all falsified with documents I never signed but somehow bore my digital signature. Blake had been laundering money through a fake charity, using my identity, including money I thought was going toward my mother's home care. Money that could have, should have, kept her alive. I couldn't breathe. I was suspended from work pending investigation. There was talk of legal action. My name was in the middle of a financial crime I didn't commit. When I confronted Blake again, he didn't even flinch. He acted like I was overreacting, like this was all just a big misunderstanding. And then he said something I'll never forget. Let me handle it. I'll clean it all up. But you have to keep your mouth shut. Like I was a child who'd spilled milk on the floor. Like I hadn't just found out the man I loved had dismantled my life from the inside. I realized, in that moment, something devastating. This wasn't carelessness. This was calculated. He hadn't just let my mother die. He'd been building a trap for months, maybe years, gaining access to my accounts, gaining my trust, isolating me from Mara, from my co-workers, making me easier to control. He orchestrated my ruin like it was a chess game, and I had been his most loyal pawn. I didn't cry that night. I didn't scream. I just sat on the edge of our shared bed and stared at him while he scrolled through his phone. Indifferent, untouchable. And that's when the final thread inside me snapped. He thought he'd won, but Blake Harper had no idea. I don't break quietly. The days after Blake's betrayal were a blur of dread, grief, and rage. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't think straight. I'd lie in bed, wide-eyed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every second of that day. My mother, gasping for air. Blake walking out of her apartment like she was a burden, not a human being. The guilt hollowed me out. I should have been there sooner. I should have listened to Mara. I should have known the man I loved was capable of this. But guilt didn't change the fact that my name was on criminal documents, that I was being investigated, that I'd been publicly suspended from my job. humiliated in a firm I once believed in. And Blake? He moved on like nothing happened, like I'd never existed. A week later, he went public with his new girlfriend, the firm's HR manager, a woman who used to send me birthday cards. They posted brunch selfies, weekend getaways, snarky captions like, "Nothing like starting fresh with someone who actually appreciates you." And I became a joke. Former co-workers whispered behind my back. Clients who once respected me now avoided eye contact. I didn't just lose my mother, I lost everything. But that kind of devastation does something to you. It makes you dangerous. It sharpens your senses. So I picked up the phone and I called Mara. The second she heard my voice, she was at my door with wine and a notebook. I told her everything: the fake non-profit, the surveillance footage, the gaslighting, the money trail. She didn't flinch. Instead, she looked me in the eye and said, "Then we bury him, brick by brick." Mara introduced me to Devon, a quiet, brilliant tech guy she knew from her grad school days. He'd gone to law school, but never took the bar. Said he didn't like courtrooms, preferred code. Within a week, Devon had cloned Blake's cloud account and started sifting through terabytes of encrypted files. We found offshore shell companies, dummy non-profits, spreadsheets marked with aliases, banking patterns that spanned 5 years. Blake hadn't just used me. He'd used dozens of people, employees, interns, clients, every one of them expendable, all to build a paper empire that looked legal, but was rotten to the core. The rage in me wasn't burning anymore. It was freezing cold, focused, controlled. I started playing dumb, sent Blake a few friendly texts, casual, vague, asked if he'd still help me clean up the mess, said I'd keep quiet if he promised to protect me. He responded exactly how I expected: smug, vague, condescending. Every reply was another nail in his coffin. I collected everything: call logs, emails, messages, bank transfers, metadata, timestamps. Devon taught me how to mirror his device, how to flag keywords, how to retrieve deleted files. And while I smiled on the outside, inside I was documenting every single lie. But it wasn't easy. At night, I'd still wake up gasping, like I'd been drowning in silence. I missed my mom's voice, her laugh, the way she always smelled like lavender and peppermint oil. I'd find myself crying while scanning spreadsheets, completely paralyzed by the weight of it all. Was this justice or obsession? Was revenge worth the part of myself I was losing? I didn't have an answer. And then it happened. I was at the firm one afternoon, quietly packing up the last of my things. My suspension meant I couldn't be there during business hours, but Mara had pulled strings. The place was mostly empty, just me and one young intern. Her name was Camille, maybe 22. Nervous, sweet, reminded me of myself a few years ago. I heard her crying in the hallway. When I asked if she was okay, she flinched. She said everything was fine, but I saw the bruise, just above her elbow, faint, but real. I didn't push, just waited. And then she told me, voice shaking, that Blake had grabbed her during a meeting, that he'd cornered her in an elevator, said no one would believe her if she said anything, that he'd ruin her career if she spoke a word. I felt sick. He hadn't stopped. He'd only gotten more confident, more reckless, more cruel. And I realized this wasn't about me anymore. It wasn't even about my mother. This man had been hurting people for years, hiding behind his charm and expensive suits and fake smiles. and no one had stopped him because people like Blake don't get caught by accident. They get caught when someone decides to stop being afraid. So I made a decision. I would burn it all down, not out of spite, but out of principle. Because Camille deserved better. Because my mom deserved better. Because I deserved better. I wiped my tears, hugged Camille, promised her I'd handle it, and I meant it. That night, I sat across from Mara and Devon at my kitchen table, files spread everywhere, timelines drawn, evidence sorted. It wasn't just revenge anymore. It was justice. Cold, precise, relentless. And it was coming for him. He just didn't know it yet. The final phase came together like a symphony. Deliberate, layered, inevitable. With Devon's help, I compiled every piece of digital evidence we had. Transaction logs, IP records, hidden folders, audio snippets, internal memos, shell company documents, even metadata trails he never thought anyone would find. We packaged it all, neatly, chronologically, undeniably. Then I walked into the district attorney's office, dressed like someone who didn't want to be remembered. No name, no fingerprints, just an envelope marked whistleblower evidence. Blake Harper, and a burner phone number that rang to a voicemail with an altered voice message. I didn't want credit. I wanted justice. The same day, I sent the same package to a rising investigative podcast, one of those gritty serial style exposés that specialize in public takedowns of corrupt systems. The host, Lena Morrow, had a reputation for uncovering buried stories and making the world listen. I told her everything. She didn't hesitate. By the end of the week, the first episode aired under the title, The Perfect Partner: How a Rising Legal Star Exploited Love, Power, and Silence. The day after it dropped, federal agents raided Blake's office. It was surgical. Computers seized, phones confiscated. 3 of his associates questioned on the spot. I watched the footage on the news like it was a dream. Finally, the world was seeing him for what he truly was. But Blake didn't fold. He got out on bail within 48 hours, walked out of the courtroom like a man who still believed in his own invincibility. And worse, he doubled down. He posted on social media, smirking outside the courthouse. The truth always rises. I've done nothing wrong. This is a witch hunt by a bitter ex who couldn't handle a breakup. Suddenly, I was trending, for all the wrong reasons. Anonymous sources painted me as unstable, vindictive, a woman scorned, a liar looking for attention. Even some former co-workers chimed in, spinning their own narratives. It stung, deep, but I wasn't finished. I had one last card to play. Months earlier, before everything fell apart, I'd started recording conversations with Blake. Not because I suspected anything criminal, just because something inside me had started to shift. A quiet voice that said, "Protect yourself." And in one of those recordings, captured on a lazy Sunday while he poured wine and laughed about my mother's medical bills, he said the words that would end him. "Your mom was sweet, but come on. She was too expensive to keep alive. You know it. We both knew it." He laughed. He laughed. That night, I uploaded the clip, raw, unedited, to every platform I could find. Sent it to the podcast team, to reporters, to victims' families, to his sponsors. Within 24 hours, it went viral. The internet didn't just react, it exploded. The public outrage was seismic. The hashtags flooded every feed. Hashtag justice for Jenna. Blake the butcher. Hashtag silence ends now. Sponsors pulled out. Clients walked. The law firm crumbled. Camille and two other former interns came forward. A class action lawsuit was filed. Federal investigators added new charges. And Blake? He was rearrested within 48 hours. This time with no bail option. Multiple counts of fraud, obstruction, harassment, identity theft, and worst of all, criminal negligence contributing to a death. The trial was quick. He tried to plead out, but the prosecution had too much evidence, my evidence. On the day of sentencing, I sat in the back row of the courtroom. No makeup, no armor, just presence. He looked smaller, not in stature, in soul, like something had collapsed inside him. When the judge asked if he had anything to say, he stood and, for the first time, didn't sound smug. He sounded scared. "I've made mistakes," he said, "but I never meant to hurt anyone. Please, I'm asking for mercy." The courtroom was silent. I leaned forward just slightly and whispered, not loud enough for anyone but myself, "Mercy is something you give to the innocent." He was sentenced to 27 years without parole, and I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. I just sat there and breathed for the first time in a long time, without feeling like I was suffocating. Clearing my name wasn't the headline. There was no press conference, no dramatic apology from the firm, no one begging for forgiveness. It came in the form of a quiet email from the district attorney's office. All charges dropped. No further legal action. That was it. No justice parade, no ribbon to cut. But it was enough. I didn't go back to my old firm. Not that they would have welcomed me. That world had already rotted from the inside out. Instead, I joined a smaller, women-led firm across town. The kind of place that didn't just talk about justice, but lived it. They specialized in corporate abuse, whistleblower defense, and financial exploitation. Cases like mine, victims like I had been. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't just feel useful, I felt powerful. In my mom's name, I created something permanent, a legal fund for nurses and caretakers, people like her who worked long hours for low pay and were often mistreated by the very systems they served. It's called the Jenna Fund. It helps nurses fight wrongful termination, helps families afford legal help when they're punished for speaking out. It's small now, but it's growing. And every time I see her name on a grant approval, every time someone says, "Because of Jenna, I got my job back," I feel like she's still here, still walking beside me. I also started going to therapy, real therapy, not the type where you just sit in silence and nod, the kind where you crack open old wounds and sit with the sting, the kind where you face yourself. I journal too, something my therapist recommended. At first, I didn't know what to write, but now it pours out. Memories, questions, rage, hope. Some days I write like I'm still talking to my mom. Some days I write like I'm finally answering myself. It's healing, slow, uneven, but real. Mara and Devin became my chosen family. Mara brings snacks and sarcasm. Devin makes terrible coffee but always shows up with answers. We have movie nights now, quiet dinners, inside jokes no one else would understand. There's peace in building your own tribe. I haven't dated since Blake, not because I'm afraid, but because I'm still learning how to be alone without feeling abandoned. And honestly, I like the quiet. I like waking up and knowing that my mind is mine again, that no one is controlling my voice, my choices, my money, my truth. The other day, I passed the coffee shop Blake used to love, the one where he'd insist on ordering for me, the one where he once told me I was too sensitive. when I cried over a story on the news. I walked past it without flinching, didn't slow down, didn't tense up, didn't feel anything at all. And that's when I realized revenge was never about hate. It wasn't even about Blake. It was about showing him that I couldn't be erased. He tried to bury me in grief, in shame, in fear. But I didn't just survive, I rebuilt. And now, every breath I take is mine. It's a grey morning. Avery stands in front of a modest gravestone tucked in a quiet cemetery. No cameras, no crowds, just her and her mother. She kneels slowly, places a folded letter at the base of the headstone. Her fingers linger for a moment before pulling back. Her voice trembles, but it's steady. I'm sorry I couldn't save you, Mom, but I swear I made him pay for what he did, and I'm finally free. She exhales, not the kind of breath you take when you're exhausted, but the kind that says you've survived the fire and come out whole on the other side. She stands, turns, and looks directly into the camera. A single tear escapes, but she wipes it away, not with shame, but with purpose. If you're watching this and someone's made you feel small, broken, or disposable, I want you to remember something. She takes a moment, a pause that feels like it holds a lifetime inside it. The pain they gave you, you can return it tenfold without losing your soul. Her voice hardens, not cruel, but clear. Just never forget who you are in the process. She nods once, not to the camera, but to herself, like a promise, like closure, then walks away from the grave, shoulders back, head high. She doesn't look back, because she doesn't need to. She's not running anymore. She's becoming.